This is Victor, and welcome to this first edition of Benchmarking Jesus, responding to life's problems. Why benchmark Jesus? Well, first of all, what does the word benchmark mean? A benchmark is something that serves as a standard by which others may be measured or judged, or a point of reference from which measurements may be made. As Christians, we strive to emulate Jesus in all aspects of our lives. But what does that look like when faced with the problems and challenges of everyday life? Jesus encountered numerous difficulties while walking on earth, and his responses were perfect examples of love, wisdom, and grace under pressure. In this podcast, we will explore how we can benchmark our responses to life's struggles by looking at the way Jesus handled conflict, moral dilemmas, societal issues, and spiritual challenges. The purpose of this podcast is to serve as a practical guide for Christians who want to model their lives after Jesus, learning how he responded to a variety of problems and applying these lessons to modern life. First, Jesus and personal conflict. This will be our part one. Jesus and personal conflict. Conflict with authorities is the first one. Jesus frequently clashed with religious authorities, particularly the Pharisees, who challenged his teachings and questioned his authority. One example is Jesus' response to the Pharisees about the Sabbath in Matthew 12, 1 through 8. So in Matthew 12, 1 through 8, this is what we find. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." But he said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath, and are blameless? Yet I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Well, the context is that Jesus and his disciples were walking through grain fields on the Sabbath. The disciples, hungry, began to pluck heads of grain to eat. This act, though minor, was considered work, quote unquote, work by the Pharisees, who accused them of violating Sabbath law. Now, here's Jesus' response. There's three bold arguments. First, David's example. In 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 6, Jesus recalls how David, when hungry, ate the consecrated bread reserved only for priests. This wasn't lawful, yet it was permitted because of human need. Now, the point is, human necessity can override ceremonial law. Number two, the priests in the temple. He points out that priests profane the Sabbath by working, offering sacrifices, lighting fires, yet they're guiltless. The point is, even the law allows exceptions when serving God's purposes. Number three, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And he quoted that from Hosea chapter 6, verse 6. Jesus quotes this to emphasize that God values compassion over ritual. The point? The Sabbath is meant to bless people, not burden them. The climax. The Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. That's what the Lord Jesus said. This is Jesus' mic drop moment. He declares his authority over the Sabbath itself. The point is, Jesus isn't just interpreting the law, he is the divine author of it. Now, what's our takeaway here? What is the theological takeaway? Jesus reframes the Sabbath not as a rigid rule book, but as a gift of rest and mercy. He exposes the Pharisees' obsession with legalism and he invites them and us into a deeper understanding of God's heart, one that prioritizes human dignity, compassion, and divine presence over empty ritual. We go to another instance when Jesus was asked by the Pharisees about taxes. Here we learn of his wisdom in answering the trap question about paying taxes. In Matthew 22:15 through 22, this is what we read. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent to him his disciples with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth, nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. So they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, Whose image and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. The trap, it is a political dilemma. The Pharisees and Herodians, they're strange bedfellows politically. They joined forces to corner Jesus. They ask, Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? This is a loaded question. If Jesus says yes, he risks alienating the Jewish people who resent Roman rule. If he says no, he could be accused of rebellion against Rome. They are not seeking truth. They're baiting him into a lose-lose scenario. Here's Jesus' response. Brilliant and balanced response of Jesus. Jesus asks for a denarius, the coin used for the tax, and poses a counter question. Whose image is this? They reply, Caesar's. Then Jesus delivers the iconic line, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Now let's unpack the wisdom here. First, he exposes their hypocrisy. By asking for the coin, Jesus reveals that they already use Roman currency, acknowledging Caesar's authority in practice, even if they resent it. Number two, he avoids the trap. Rather than choosing sides, Jesus reframes the issue. He doesn't deny civic responsibility, but he elevates spiritual allegiance. And lastly, number three, he introduces dual allegiance. Jesus affirms that we live in two realms: the civic realm, Caesar's image on the coin, and the spiritual realm, God's image on humanity, as found in Genesis 1:27. We owe taxes to governments, but we owe our whole selves to God. Now, what is the deeper message here? Jesus is not just dodging a trap. He's not just dodging a trap. He's teaching a timeless principle that civic duty is valid, but ultimate loyalty belongs to God. This has echoed through centuries of Christian thought, influencing how believers navigate politics, ethics, and conscience. In a world still wrestling with the tension between faith and politics, Jesus' answer remains a compass. It reminds us to be responsible citizens, but never to let earthly systems eclipse divine truth. I repeat, but never to let earthly systems eclipse divine truth. The analysis is that Jesus consistently responded to conflict with wisdom and calmness. Rather than being defensive or aggressive, he always spoke truthfully, often turning the conflict into a teaching moment. How can we, like Jesus, handle opposition with grace? We need to face criticism or authority figures while maintaining integrity and peace. That's all for our first edition of our Benchmarking with Jesus. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you.